It usually happens on a Tuesday morning. It is not a dramatic raid like you see in the movies. There are no sirens wailing, just a firm, authoritative knock on the door. You answer it, coffee in hand, perhaps expecting a courier or a neighbor returning a package. Instead, you are greeted by a court bailiff and a locksmith holding a heavy-duty drill. The bailiff doesn't smile. He hands you a single piece of paper. It is a notice of vacant possession. He tells you, in a calm, practiced voice, that you have 20 minutes. 20 minutes to gather your essential belongings, your medicines, your passport, your children's favorite toy, a change of clothes, and step outside. While you are scrambling, your hands shaking, trying to process what is happening, you hear the sound of the drill behind you. The locksmith is already destroying the deadbolt on your front door. The lock you bought to keep your family safe is being replaced by a bank lock to keep you out. The house you raised your children in, the house you thought was your retirement plan, the house you worked 80 hours a week, picked up overtime shifts, and sacrificed vacations to pay for is no longer yours. It belongs to the bank. And in that moment, as you stand on the sidewalk watching the bailiff post a no trespassing sign on your own front window, you realize the Canadian dream has just become a legal nightmare. Welcome back to Canada Property Watch. In our last report, we exposed the margin call, the terrifying letters demanding lump sum payments. Today, we are discussing the inevitable consequence of those letters. We are discussing the end game. When we are witnessing a statistic that the mainstream media is terrified to report because it shatters the narrative of a soft landing. In key pockets of the Greater Toronto Area and British Columbia, power of sale listings have skyrocketed by over 300% year over year. This is not a market correction. This is an eviction crisis. This is eviction day for the Canadian middle class. In this comprehensive deep dive investigation, we are going to pull back the curtain on the brutal legal mechanism known as power of sale. We will explain why it is far faster, more ruthless, and more destructive than the American foreclosure system. We will take you into the neighborhoods that are turning into ghost towns of bank-owned inventory. We will expose the collapse of the private lending industry, the shadow banks, that is fueling this fire, and we will explain why a single power of sale on your street is a financial death sentence for your own property value. To understand the severity of this moment, we must first dispel a dangerous myth. Many Canadians watch American news and think that if they stop paying their mortgage, they can live in their house for 3 years while fighting the bank in court. They think of the 2008 crisis in Florida, where people squatted in their mansions for years, rent-free. Let me be crystal clear. Canada is not Florida. In Canada, specifically in Ontario, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and PEI, we operate under a legal framework called power of sale. It is a system designed by banks, for banks. It is designed for one thing: speed. Unlike a judicial foreclosure, the bank does not need to go to court to get the title to your house. They do not need a judge's permission to sell it. The right to sell your house is written directly into the fine print of the mortgage contract you signed 5 years ago, the contract you didn't read because you were too excited about the granite countertops. Here is the timeline of your destruction. It moves with the precision of a guillotine. Once you are in default for as little as 15 days, the clock starts ticking. 15 days. That is one missed payment and a bounced check. 35 days later, you receive a notice of sale. This is the warning shot. You now have a redemption period, usually another 35 days, to pay off the entire mortgage balance plus legal fees. Not just the missed payments, but the whole loan if you cannot pay. And let us be honest, if you couldn't make the monthly payment, you certainly can't pay the whole $1 million. The bank takes possession. Total time from default to eviction, less than 90 days in some cases. This speed is why the inventory is spiking so vertically right now. In a foreclosure system, the court backlog acts like a dam, holding back the flood of supply. In a power of sale system, the dam breaks instantly, and right now, the dam is wide open. We are seeing listings pop up daily in Brampton, Mississauga, Surrey, and Oshawa with the telltale signs in the description: property sold as is, where is. Seller makes no representations or warranties. Schedule A to be attached to all offers. These are the legal disclaimers of a bank that wants to wash its hands of the asset. They don't know if the basement floods. And they don't know if the furnace works. They don't care. They just want the cash. Where is this plus 300% number coming from? You won't find it in the monthly press release from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. They hide these numbers. They lump them in with regular sales because power of sale is a dirty word. It smells of desperation. It smells of failure. But if you look at the raw data from the sheriff's office regarding eviction notices, and if you filter MLS listings for specific keywords like power of sale, bank sale, or under order, the picture is terrifying. In the Peel region alone, the heart of the trucking and logistics economy, these listings have tripled since last year. Why is this happening now? Why 2026? It is the delayed effect of the rate hikes. Now, monetary policy operates with a long and variable lag. For 2 years, homeowners have been fighting to stay alive. They depleted their savings accounts. They raided their RRSPs. They maxed out their credit cards to pay the mortgage. They borrowed money from family overseas. They even stopped paying their property taxes, a hidden default that banks hate because the municipality has priority over the bank. But now, the liquidity has dried up. The well is empty. The extend and pretend game that the big banks played, allowing negative amortization where your mortgage balance actually grows every month, has hit a regulatory wall. The Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions has quietly told the banks, enough. You cannot let a mortgage grow forever. When the loan-to-value ratio hits a certain cap, the bank must act. But they are forced by regulation to liquidate the asset to recover their capital. But the biggest driver of this eviction tsunami, the ones responsible for the most aggressive listings, is not the big six banks. It is the shadow banking sector. We have talked about the mortgage investment corporations and private lenders before. These are the lenders of last resort. They lent money to the Uber drivers, the self-employed contractors, and the new immigrants who couldn't pass the bank's stress test. They charge 10%, 12%, sometimes 15% interest. These lenders are not massive institutions with infinite balance sheets. They are pools of investor money. They are funded by dentists, lawyers, and retirees chasing yield. And right now, those investors are panicking. They see the housing market crashing, and they want their money back. They are issuing redemption requests to the MICs. To pay back the investors, the MICs need cash, but their cash is tied up in mortgages. So, what do? They call the loans. When a private mortgage comes up for renewal, the private lender is not offering a renewal. They are issuing a demand for payment. They want the full principal back immediately. The borrower is stunned, but I paid every month, they say. It doesn't matter. The private lender is insolvent. They need to liquidate you to save themselves. The borrower tries to refinance with a big bank, but they fail the stress test because rates are too high. They try to find another private lender, but the private market has frozen. No one is lending. They are trapped. So the private lender initiates power of sale. They are ruthless. And they move faster than the big banks because they are desperate for liquidity. This is why you see so many townhouses in the suburbs hitting the market simultaneously. It is a liquidation event of the private lending sector. Walk through a neighborhood in North Brampton or certain parts of Surrey today and you will see the signs. Not the for sale signs, but the other signs. The grass is a little too long. The snow hasn't been shoveled. The blinds are drawn tight day and night. There is a specific type of lockbox on the door handle, a heavy-duty combination lock that realtors recognize as a bank box. Inside, the house is empty, or worse, it is filled with the debris of a hasty exit. I have spoken to realtors who specialize in these sales. They tell horror stories, holes in the walls where flat-screen TVs were ripped down, some carpets stained, appliances missing, copper piping stripped from the basement ceiling, concrete poured down the drains. This is the rage of the evicted homeowner. This is the physical manifestation of financial ruin. But here's the tragedy. A power of sale doesn't just destroy the family who lived there, it destroys the entire street. Imagine you are a responsible homeowner living 3 doors down. You have paid your mortgage on time. You maintain your garden. You want to sell your house to retire. You list it for $1 million, which is what the comparable sales say it is worth. But then, the bank lists the foreclosure down the street. The bank does not care about market value. They care about liquidation value. They need to clear the debt of $800,000. So they list it for $850,000 to get a bidding war? No, they list it to sell in 48 hours. They accept an offer for $800,000. Boom. That is now the new comparable for the neighborhood. Your $1 million house is no longer worth $1 million. An appraiser looks at the street and says, well, the most recent sale was $800,000. You just lost $200,000 of equity because your neighbor went broke. This is the contagion effect. One foreclosure acts like a black hole, sucking in the value of every surrounding property. It creates a death spiral. As values drop, more neighbors fall underwater on their mortgages, leading to more margin calls, leading to more foreclosures. We must address the pre-construction nightmare. And this is a subsector of the market where the power of sale crisis is most violent. 3 years ago, thousands of investors bought condos on paper. They put down 20% deposits. They expected to flip the contract for a profit before the building was even finished. Now the buildings are finishing. Closing day has arrived, but the appraisal comes in $200,000 lower than the purchase price. The bank refuses to lend the full amount. The buyer doesn't have the extra $200,000 cash. They cannot close. The developer is ruthless. They don't just keep the deposit, they sue for damages. But often, before the lawsuit settles, the unit is seized and sold under power of sale. We are seeing brand new, never lived in condos flooding the market as assignment sales or bank sales. When you see a building with 20 active listings and 5 of them are bank sales, that building is effectively dead. No bank will lend on the other units because the building is considered high risk due to the concentration of defaults. If you bought a unit in that building and you can close, congratulations. You just bought an asset that is depreciating by the day, surrounded by desperate sellers dumping inventory. There is a hidden group of victims in this crisis that no one talks about. The tenants. Many of these defaulted homes are rental properties. The banker landlord, the amateur investor who bought 5 houses, is going broke. But the tenant living in the basement suite doesn't know this. The tenant has paid their rent on time every single month. They are model citizens. They have no idea that their landlord hasn't paid the mortgage in 6 months. The landlord took the rent money and used it to pay other debts, or simply pocketed it. One day, the sheriff knocks. The tenant shows their lease. I have a contract, they say. The sheriff shakes his head. I am sorry. The mortgage predates your lease. The bank is taking possession. In a power of sale, the bank has the right to evict the tenant to sell the property vacant, because a vacant home sells faster and for more money than a home with a tenant. Suddenly, a family that did everything right is homeless. They are given a few weeks to leave. They are thrown into a rental market with 0% vacancy and skyrocketing rents. This is the human cost of the speculative bubble. Innocent families are being collateral damage in the liquidation of the investor class. Now let us talk about the strategic default. In the US, in some states, demortgages are non-recourse. This means if you hand the keys to the bank, you walk away. The bank takes the house and the debt is forgiven. Your credit is ruined, but you are free. Canada is a full recourse jurisdiction, with very limited exceptions in Alberta and Saskatchewan for specific types of mortgages. In Ontario and BC, you cannot just walk away. Here's the nightmare scenario. You owe $1 million on your mortgage. The bank seizes the house and sells it under power of sale. Because the market has crashed and because banks are terrible sellers, they only get $700,000 for the house. There is a shortfall or deficiency of $300,000. Do you think the bank just writes that off? Absolutely not. They sue you for the $300,000. They get a deficiency judgment in court. This judgment allows them to garnish your wages. They can take 20 to 50% of your paycheck for the next 20 years. They can seize your other assets. Your car, your RRSPs in some cases. They can put a lien on any future property you buy. You lose the house, you lose your down payment, you lose your credit rating, and you are left with a $300,000 debt that you have to pay while renting a basement apartment. It is a financial life sentence. It is modern-day indentured servitude to the bank. This is why people are terrified. This is why suicide rates in the real estate sector are a silent statistic we need to be worried about. The pressure is unbearable. We are also seeing a massive spike in fraud-induced power of sale. During the boom, the Brampton loan was famous. Mortgage brokers would fabricate income documents, fake T4s, was fake employment letters, to get people approved for mortgages they couldn't afford. The banks turned a blind eye because prices were going up. As long as the asset is appreciating, the fraud doesn't matter. Everyone gets paid. But when the tide goes out, you see who is swimming naked. Now that the banks are auditing their portfolios for risk, they are finding these fraudulent loans. And when they find one, they don't wait for a missed payment. They call the loan immediately due to breach of covenant. They send a letter stating, "We have discovered your income documents were falsified. We demand repayment of the full mortgage within 30 days. Obviously, the borrower can't pay. They never had the income to begin with. The bank moves to power of sale instantly. These are not economic defaults, they are legal defaults." And this is cleaning out the rot in the system, but it is doing so by throwing thousands of families onto the street. If you are a buyer watching this, sitting on cash, you might be thinking, this is my chance, I can get a deal. Be very, very careful. Buying a power of sale property is risky. You are buying it as is. If the previous owner poured concrete down the toilet out of spite, that is your problem. If they stripped the electrical wiring, that is your problem. If there are hidden liens on the property, that is your problem. Banks specifically exclude all warranties. You have no recourse if you find black mold behind the drywall the day after closing. And most importantly, you are catching a falling knife. If the bank is willing to sell it to you for $800,000, it is because their risk analysts think it might be worth $700,000 next year. Yes, do not underestimate the banks. They have better data than you. If they are dumping it, maybe you shouldn't be buying it yet. The smart money is selling. The banks are selling. The only people buying right now are the ones who haven't realized the party is over. So, what should you do if you are in trouble? If you receive a notice of sale, do not put your head in the sand. That is the worst mistake. The legal machine does not stop because you are sad. It only stops if you pay or if you sell. If you still have any equity left, even $10,000, sell the house yourself before the bank takes it. You will get a better price than the bank will. You will control the timeline. You will save the sheriff eviction trauma for your kids. And most importantly, you will avoid the deficiency judgment. You know, it is heartbreaking to sell your dream home. I know. But it is better to walk away with zero than to walk away with a $300,000 debt. To the neighbors, watch your street, watch for the signs. If you see a power of sale happen on your block, understand that your property value has just been reset. Adjust your expectations. If you were planning to refinance, do it now before that sale closes and destroys your appraisal. The eviction day is not a single day. It is happening every day in every city across Canada. The plus 300% number is a lagging indicator. It reflects the pain of 6 months ago. The pain of today, the high rates, the job losses, the 60-cent dollar will show up in the power of sale numbers 6 months from now. We are just at the beginning of the wave. The tsunami is still building. The era of the ATM home is gone. The era of the banker landlord is here. The locks are being changed. The signs are going up. The bailiffs are busy. And the question you need to ask yourself is, how secure is your own deadbolt? Subscribe to Canada Property Watch. We will continue to monitor the court filings, the sheriff eviction notices, and the bank balance sheets. We are your early warning system in a market that is determined to hide the truth. Stay liquid. Stay vigilant. And remember, if the bank holds the mortgage, you are just a tenant with a down payment, and tenants can be evicted.